Hello everybody and welcome to the first episode of 2019 for the Robot Wars History Podcast, a show where we get together and talk about key teams and bots in the British robot combat scene and on the televised show as well. Today I'm your host Toon Ganondorf and I am joined by the one and only Luke.
Hello.
And also Dan.
Hi.
Not the one and only Dan, we have other Dans.
We do only have one and only Dan. Okay, so today we are going to talk about the Spin to Win King boys themselves, the Hypno-Disc team. This will be a two-parter, much like our other big ones on Chaos 2 and Firestorm. And we are going to today aim to cover the first half of Hypno-Disc's career. Luke, what do we want to do?
Well,
what's the good word?
Well, we are going to cover the first half of their career where Hypno-Disc blazes its way onto the screens and into our hearts by basically inventing, as far as I know, the flywheel spinner. And we're going to kick things right off at the beginning, of course, with its Series 3 build, which is in an entirely different and unique build to its future iterations.
And who better to discuss than Dan, the man himself?
Oh boy. Well, the first Hypno-Disc build was under the weight limit at 78.3 kilograms. It had its standard ground clearance, which it had throughout pretty much all of its existence, of 25 millimeters, which is surprisingly high for a robot that did so well. It was powered by electric motors, and it cost £800. But the thing that everybody really cares about is that massive fucking disc at the front of it. Which in its first incarnation spun at 600 RPM, which is baby speeds for what we're familiar with now. But back in 1999, at least on this side of the Atlantic Ocean, that was quite terrifying.
Yeah, there is one quote from the Hypno-Disc website which I think really sums up what they were going for here. We set out to design and build a robot with an effective weapon. There is nothing more boring to watch than two boxy bots trying to scratch each other's paintwork with 2-inch spikes.
Yep. Fair call too. Surprisingly enough, I'm just looking at Hypno-Disc's weight in comparison to the others. They're all pretty much on par, but in its semi-final in Series 3, the only robots that it's heavier than are Blade and Stegosaurus and Evil Weevil. Everyone else is heavier. Beast of Bodman, 101... Scudder's Revenge and Gravedigger are all heavier. No, this is just in the semi-final. Trident might be heavier, but someone like 101 and Scudder's Revenge surprised me. I thought Hypno-Disc could be heavier, but most of the weight I think comes in the disc. I think at most of its career, the disc was like a quarter of its weight at least.
That wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, but anyway, that's a good spot to it. Surprisingly enough, with the 25mm ground clearance, I think there's a point in Hypno-Disc's career where the only time it didn't fight at least a flipper or a lifter was 101 in Series 3. It's the only robot in Series 3 that couldn't technically flip over the stream Equus.
It's good. It's a good thing you say technically there, because I don't think either of its first two assailants could reasonably expected to really pose that kind of risk to it.
And technically, if you include Series 4 as well, the only robots without a lifter or a flipper to fight Hypno-Discs are 101, Splinter, and Pussycat. That's it. Everyone else, like Razorblade, Predator, VMAX, Wild Thing, they all got it. So
can we
really
call
is
it
remarkable.
Predator a fight?
Sure. It's surprising that it takes until Extreme 1 for Hypno-Disc to even be flipped over by another opponent, besides Chaos 2, of course, to be flipped over by an opponent. But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. So as far as Hypno-Disc goes, we have all discussed Hypno-Disc's most famous fights a number of times on this podcast. The Robogeddon and Stealth fights, we will touch on those, but we're not going to discuss the Berserk 2 fight in any great detail. These guys have talked about it on the Notables podcast, and I've discussed it with Nick and Toast on the Ultimate Review podcast. So if you're interested in our thoughts on that fight, you know where to go and listen to our comments on that. But we'll talk quickly about Hypno-Disc in Series 3. Now, Hypno-Disc in Series 3, at this point, we had robots with spinning discs, there was a couple kicking around who had something you might call a spinning disc. Hypno-Disc kind of justified its own word. So they started calling it a flywheel, which is a lot more apt considering how fast and how big it sort of was. Like, spinning disc just does not suit Hypno-Disc, even though the word disc is in its title. And this sort of shows...
When you think spinning discs in this, before Series 3, like, what comes to mind is, like, the little circular saws on, like, the back of Roadblock or something, and this is an entirely different beast.
Yeah. And, like, I'm trying to think of who else we've got. Pussycat, it's a lot smaller. You've got Cerberus. You've got Angel of Death.
It's not a pet.
GBH had a little one at the back.
Yeah, before
real winners there.
Hypno-Disc, Robot Wars really was the battle of the wedges and lifters, and Hypno-Disc played a big part in changing all that.
And actually, it kind of goes into the rock, paper, scissors narrative that I mentioned before, where, things move up to the next stage. So you had the wedge, and so what was the answer to the wedge was the lifter. The lifter can beat the wedge. And what beats the lifter? Well, something that can just smash the robot before you can be lifted, and that was Hypno-Disc. That's what they did. And that's why them rampaging through all these fairly adequate lifters and flippers, who would have done quite well in Series 2, has sort of done. So, talking about Robogeddon and Stealth, both fights are iconic. Both fights are just wanton slaughter. And they are both iconic.
The thing that I love about these fights isn't actually when they aired, but the fact that you could see other people watching this fight in the background in an earlier heat. Just the looks of horror on these people's faces as this thing fucking atomizes these two otherwise not completely awful robots.
Yeah.
I mean, Stealth was fairly completely awful, but Robogeddon was a decent enough low level machine, I think.
The most
funnily enough,
go on.
I was going to say, funny thing about Robogeddon and Stealth is that they are more iconic in their destroyed state than they are in their complete state. Like, you look at Robogeddon with all its armor intact and you're like, what is that? And then you see it, I recognize Robogeddon with its flipper with no armor on the side, kind of almost looks like a distant ancestor of Series 8 version of Beast. But when it's fully encased in armor, I'm like, what is that thing? Is that like Milliamp Bug's weird older brother?
Well, I mean, the thing is, you can understand why to be horrified, because I'd say the most damage we've seen to a robot before these things is Forklift in the Reserve Rumble, but it's a reserve, and that damage is caused by Sir Kill-A-Lot, the meanest, baddest robot there is. And then this competitor comes along and just completely skins them alive, basically.
Yeah. Literally. And poor old Robogeddon, they're actually working until the end. Like, they're still moving, their wheels are spinning, their flipper's still trying to fire. Like, that's what makes it so funny, is that it just gets absolutely shredded.
You got to give them props for determination there, to be fair.
And they didn't.
Stealth, on the other hand...
Yeah, and the thing is, Robogeddon... I was going to say, Robogeddon, we found this out in an interview with the Hypno-Disc team in Robot Wars magazine. They very nearly won this fight. Hypno-Disc's begun... I don't know how they managed to cut this out in the edit, because it's a beautiful job, but Hypno-Disc spent the first, 30 seconds, minute or so in this fight stuck in reverse drive, and that opens up a very cursed timeline where Robogeddon goes on to win this fight, probably lose to Berserk 2, and then who knows where Berserk 2 ends up, probably loses...
Yeah, not sure who... Yeah, Berserk 2.
Probably loses
Berserk 2 versus Evil Weevil. I think Evil Weevil beats Berserk 2 and then loses to 101, and then we get 101 in the grand final.
Oh, that is absolutely
fair.
I mean, speaking of drive, the impressive thing about Hypno-Disc in this series is that it couldn't spin the disc and drive at the same time. So every time you see it moving around with the disc turning, it's just rev the disc up and then cut the power to it, and is just letting the momentum keep it going. And it says a lot about how good the Rose Boys were at driving this thing, that they were able to be so effective when they could either move or power up the weapon, but not both, and they still made
it's
it
something. It's something.
arguably with the robot partially destroying itself every fight.
It's something that becomes more clear, and it's something that becomes clearer as the fights go on. That issue, but in the Robogeddon stealth fights, it doesn't matter one bit because they cannot take it. They cannot take the damage enough to capitalize on that.
Yeah. Poor old Stealth. You know, they're more iconic in their status as having their rear end, shredded.
Yeah.
Like, just absolutely torn to pieces. Having him completely intact is almost an anomaly. And as for the broken flipper ram, that might be one of the most iconic Robot Wars.
Oh yeah, it's
pieces
like
of damage,
cutting
I
the
think, for the
jugular.
entirety. It is. It's like tearing. It's like someone breaking someone's neck with one hand. It's like there's literally no coming back from this. Like your flipper does not work anymore. It is just a wedge with a loosely attached, piece.
That is what I like about these early Hypno-Disc fights. This isn't something as spinners become more and more powerful, you see more like kind of catastrophic deaths. Like I'm thinking basically any Tombstone Destruction fight, Frostbite versus Supernova. But this is something you don't really see anymore because Hypno-Disc in its early incarnations, it's like death by 1,000 cuts. Like there is stages to its destruction of Robogeddon. There is stages to its destruction of Stealth, and it's something you just don't see anymore because spinners are too powerful. But it's more brutal.
And armor's too strong. Like Hypno-Disc, it was good at is an entertainer, whereas the modern spinners like Carbide and Supernova, Supernova versus Frostbite was as close to a classic series spin as we can get. Big spinners now, they just hit you until you break down, and you get some mangled bits, and you get some great stuff like Rapid.
And that's only like one or two hits as well. Like the modern spinner fights are over so quickly that I don't like them that much.
No.
I have fun watching Hypno-Disc because it manages to put on a show while mercilessly destroying some poor unsuspecting opponent robot.
And the robot can still move, which gives a little bit of hope. Which it's like the Robogeddon thing. So
yeah, and that can lead to some surprise comebacks, as we'll discuss in part 2.
I think the closest.
I
think the closest Monday parallel is maybe Carbide versus Eruption, but like it's fun for the same reason. Like if you discovered like I don't know a color film from 1912, you might be impressed. If you saw one from 1973, you don't really care.
Anyway, so which one do you... Just a quick question then. Which one do you like better? Hypno-Disc versus Robogeddon or Hypno-Disc versus Stealth?
I kind of... It's hard to say, because like in terms of which robot is better, I would say Robogeddon is better, which raises that fight up a bit. But the Stealth fight with the destroyed flipper ram and all that is just a more iconic image, in my opinion.
I would slightly go Robogeddon just because I do like the kind of more, it's like the way that it just kind of rips off the skin and then takes out the wheels and then the CO2. It's just becomes more and more hopeless.
I reckon, if you'd asked me any year in the last 10 years, I would have said Stealth. Now I think I say Robogeddon. If for no other reason than just that one reaction shot of the team member just laughing at the destruction to his own robot.
What else can you do?
That's just so funny. It's just like, he just laughs. And Robogeddon's still trying to move, whereas Stealth, even before Hypno-Disc starts getting laid in, Stealth's just sort of like trundling around super slowly with its flipper wide open, and so has a scare against Berserk 2, which we've discussed, but it does eventually win, and I think for the benefit of the series
there is
overall,
one thing I want to note real quick. Something I realised watching this is Berserk 2's armor stands up to Hypno better than anything that isn't Behemoth's Scoop or Tornado's Wedge. The latter of which is just a big block of metal.
It could, of course, be Carbide.
Yes.
Evil Weevil. Now that's an interesting fight because it's the one that we just don't think about.
I forget this fight exists.
Yeah, it's the least remarkable by far of Hypno-Disc's fights in Series 3.
Yeah, I mean, apparently, Hypno-Disc almost had to drop out because Derek Rose had to go away, and there was some blackouts and some repair, lack of parts, but they did eventually repair. And so as a result, Hypno-Disc was a lot less potent in the semi-finals and grand final than it was in the heat. But for whatever, it still managed to coast its way through due to, I think, a lack of its opponents being able to capitalise on that, especially Evil Weevil.
That's something that would become kind of a problem for Hypno-Disc in late. It was a problem for Hypno-Disc in its Series 3 build, and it became a problem for it again after the weight increase.
I would dispute that.
It was doing a lot of damage, but it was also, the recoil for that damage was damaging the internals of itself. And it would down over the course of the series.
I would dispute that, because I think what Hypno has that we'll discuss this more in the second part probably, but I think what Hypno-Disc has, which honestly no other spinner than perhaps Carbide or Ironside had in Robot Wars, was immense reliability for a spinner.
Oh yeah. It was still incredibly reliable, and the Series 4 build is probably the best in terms of that.
Yeah. So Evil Weevil, it really is just a bit of a gouge out before Evil Weevil sort of just succumbs, and really all you can say is that the superior robot won.
Weevil
There's nothing really remarkable.
It's not
about
capable
it.
or well driven enough to capitalise on it.
And the 101 fight, I feel like we've discussed pretty recently on the 101 podcast. Do you guys have anything to add to that?
Yes, I do. It's more to do with the end of the fight. Something I noticed while watching is when Amy finishes a little poem to Craig Charles, there is, I don't know if this was edited in or not, but there was an absolute deafening roar of slamming on the audience screen, which, fun fact we've recently discovered, was very loosely attached and in danger of coming off. So imagine that screen coming off and Robot Wars having to be cancelled or delayed for several days because of Amy's little poem.
Yeah. The 101 podcast, the 101 fight is kind of interesting because I actually genuinely reckon 101 probably should have won, but I just don't think they were ever going to give it to 101. I reckon if this was, Series 9, they absolutely would have gone, nah, fuck having a more interesting robot. Let's just, give it to who we think
it's a bizarre
would have won.
It's a bizarre fight because, 101, it's not going to do much damage, but you think it could capitalise more on Hypno-Discs not basically barely working, but it just doesn't.
Because 101 does. When I was a kid, I used to think 101 just had this ridiculously tough armor. But then, when you rewatch it as a grown-up, you realise, the reason it stood up is that Hypno-Disc's disc isn't spinning, not because it's tanking the blows.
And it's not that, and it's not that 101 can't be aggressive, and because it's in its fight a season later against Dominator 2 against a far more powerful robot. It puts on a spirited display, but against Hypno-Disc, it just can't muster anything.
Yeah, it does. It really, its main contribution is climbing all over the disc and using its full body horizontal, full body vertical spinners to scuff it up.
Yeah, and this was
Move over black hole.
This was actually the first time the judges had gone into the arena to inspect the robots after the fight.
Yeah, well, you had to see how much damage 101 had done with its spinners.
Maybe they left some tire treads on Hypno's disc.
Yeah, got to see the damage from that vertical flywheel that it has, according to the Ultimate Guide.
Yeah, well, it does. There's 2 vertical flywheels. It doubles wheels. It's like Saw Point. Anyway, the grand final versus Steg is such an anomaly, and I keep saying that, but it is. It's an anomaly in the fact that it's not one of Hypno-Disc Series 3's crappy performances, but it's also, later in the tournament. You just assume that Hypno-Disc is fading throughout the tournament, and yet it beats quite decisively one of the better robots in the tournament.
Yeah, this isn't something you see with spinners. Spinners aren't supposed to have these dips. They crash. They go downhill.
Yeah, it seems like they must have had enough time to patch it up again after the 101 fight.
Yeah. Because Stegosaurus is doing pretty well, and then all of a sudden you look away and you're like, hang on a minute, is that a welt in the side of Steg? And then you realise that the whole back has been torn away, and eventually Stegosaurus breaks down. So,
which is impressive. Actually managing to make Stegosaurus break down, because it's not a weak machine.
Yeah, the thing with Steg is a strong bot. It has this immense drive power, and it's able to get in some really good drives into Hypno. But something we'll see a few times with Hypno is even though the other robot is good, it just doesn't have the difference in damage potential is just too immense to come over with good drives and good driving and aggression. It's Hypno-Disc is just able to impart that so much more damage than Stead can, and in the end, it shows, and they knock out their drive.
Yeah, and it's impressive because it's the sort of thing that gives me, quite a bit of faith that Hypno-Disc would have been able to beat Tornado in Series 4 and probably even Series 5 in like a straight 1v1. By Series 6 it was having issues, but certainly Series 4.
Things about the Series 6 design that we'll cover when we get to part 2.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the end of Steg, and then we get to the grand final, which is over in a few seconds. But the hype going into this fight, when I watched it as a kid, like by the time you saw both of these robots, you knew that they were going to be the two finalists.
Yeah,
it was just a matter of yeah.
Yeah, both of them have changed the game entirely.
Yeah, like the thing is, right, I started with Series 4, as I've said before on this podcast. This fight was only shown in like clips. It was like the build up to the rematch they were anticipating at the end of Series 4. So it was just this legendary mythical fight for me until I finally saw it when I tracked Series 3 down on YouTube, and it's over in like 10 seconds.
Yeah. I mean, at the time, it was still pretty iconic. Like, the idea of Chaos 2 stopping the spinning disc by landing on it was fantastic. But of course, then you realise it actually wasn't spinning that fast, and the fact that it doesn't start spinning again are both problems rather than, achievements. But at the time, it was like, oh my god, they've stopped the disc, they can win this, and then they do win it. It's a very simple fight. Like, if you were showing like a kid Robot Wars and trying to get them into it and understand what a big deal it was, you show them all of Hypno-Disc and all of Chaos 2's fights and show them the final, and they'd get an appreciation for strategy and how it all worked. As a grown-up, it's a bit more like, oh, it's sad, I wish it was better.
Yeah, but if Hypno-Disc had been working properly, there was a good chance it would have just fucking rated Chaos 2.
Yeah, that move where Chaos 2 lands its flipper on could have ended a lot more ugly.
Yeah. Just look at the fight with 13 Black in Extreme
I was thinking
2.
more the fight with Stealth.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's Series 3. Hypno-Disc is by far, one of the best robots in the tournament, and that's reflected in its second seeding in Series 4.
And it's
it should also be noted that it did win the most original.
And absolutely deserved. No.
Because
question.
it is one of the. I'm surprised we didn't mention this right at the outset, but it is one of the best looking robots that the show ever had, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Oh, it looks incredible.
It's not like an elegant piece of art like Razor, but it's such a simple design, but it's so effective. Tiny silver shape with this big disc with just like a simple spiral painted on it, and it looks great.
And you look at all the other most original entry winners that they've ever been. Like Psycho Sprout was a gimmick winner. Milliamp Bug was no one ever replicated that design. Gemini, okay, that's fairly good. S3, not really replicated, and Crash Station, not really either. So, like, Hypno-Disc is the one that it was original, and everyone went to copy it. Like, it's by, I reckon, let me just have a quick look over this. Besides Razor's Best Design Trophy and, Tornado's Most Promising Newcomer, I think this might be the most deserving award ever. Because it's just, it was so original, it redefined what the spinner did. And everyone started copying it, like Disco Inferno, and then Supernova.
Let's be real. It invented the spinner basically. Without Hypno-Disc, I think it takes a while for people to cotton on to what the potentials.
Yeah, but Series 4 had some upgrades.
An entirely new robot. It's completely rebuilt.
Of course, the most obvious change to it, of course, was the Stream Mech. And the funny thing is that, like, after the toy had the spikes before the real robot. Because Hypno-Disc was the first competitor robot to be made into a pullback. And it's one of the ones I never got, annoyingly. But at that point, it didn't have the spikes yet. The team saw the spikes that were on the alternate shell and decided that they should put those on the new version of the robot. and that's why it has those spikes, which I think make its design look a bit better.
Yeah. Well, it just bugs me that the spikes and the streamek were the same on the robot, but on the pullback they were not. The streamek backing had the Series 3 back, and then the spike back did not have a streamek, and that used to bug me because I was like, I want the Series 4 Hypno-Disc.
Yeah, that was quite annoying. But they actually changed the disc up as well. It was now spun up to 750 RPM, which was a fairly significant upgrade from that point. And it had a shaft drive clutch and a new motor in it that allowed it to reach its maximum speed in just 3.5 seconds, which was pretty crucial in at that point in the sport. And they changed the design of the teeth. The Series 3 teeth were sort of narrow and pointed, which made lots of cuts, but didn't really, do a whole lot in terms of impact. They replaced it with big, thick ones in Series 4, which just ripped huge chunks of armor out of things.
Yeah, some nice gouges.
It is such a great one. This was what I always knew Hypno-Disc as.
Yeah, it was your debut. All right, so the first time we get a look at Hypno-Disc is during a pinball run, in which it's a fairly respectable run, but really that's not what we're here to talk about. So let's talk about its fight. So it curb stomps both the Predator and Razor Blade.
Which, curb stomping the Predator is by no means an achievement, but it is entertaining.
I think it's fairly entertaining. I don't mind the Predator. It was a nice design.
Yeah, what I do like
had a forklift.
What I do like about its method here is this is something that became Hypno-Disc's calling card in a way for a bit. It rips out Predator's battery and then destroys it, and it reminds me of the game Mortal Kombat, where Kano's fatality, where he rips the opponent's heart out and holds it up while it's still beating. It's what this reminds me of.
It is that, yeah.
Yeah, it's like it goes and attacks
it's the fucking Temple of Doom scene.
Yeah, this is a remarkably empty heat for Hypno-Disc. Like the main seed it's in contention against here is...
Oh, really? You're surprised?
Yeah, I know, but I mean, even Chaos...
You're shocked.
Even Chaos 2 at least got...
Appalled.
Chaos 2 got King B, but Hypno-Disc was... The Heat final was intended to be Hypno-Disc versus Cerberus, which Cerberus, let us remind, had done nothing but look pretty. And it wasn't going to look pretty after this fight, trust
it was
me.
armoured in titanium and Kevlar.
It beat Kilohertz by being the other robot in the arena when John Reed drove into the pit, and that was kind of about it. And it beat Mauler by having Mauler get disqualified.
Yeah. So that's two pretty impressive combat wins, if you ask me. But anyway, so yeah, look, I don't understand why they put Cerberus in here. I think it was meant to originally be Kilohertz because when Trident and Blade were going to be seated in the top half, you push everybody down to. And aside from the fact that puts King B against Razor, which makes perfect sense for what they would have wanted, and it puts Wheelie Big Cheese versus Chaos 2, which is exactly what they would have wanted, although it would have been a shame. This then puts Hypno-Disc versus Kilohertz, which is a shame for poor old Kilohertz, but probably would have been a bit more of a pretense that Hypno-Disc wasn't just... They were just like, let's just get Hypno-Disc to the semi-final as quickly as possible. The only other The real threat here was probably Onslaught, but they don't even show up in the arena.
It says a lot that the most challenging fight that Hypno-Disc had in this was fucking VMAX, which was
the VMAX fight is fight is worth looking into because
look, so the VMAX fight is genuinely very enjoyable. I remember the Series 4 heat I had recorded as a kid on VHS tape. And I watched it over and over and over and over again. And the Hypno-Disc VMAX fight was always the highlight of this heat because, if you had to choose between never appearing on Robot Wars and appearing on Robot Wars in two fights, one of which you KO a seed and one of which you get eviscerated by Hypno-Disc, I'd say, gee, that was worth it.
Absolutely.
VMAX had a pretty good show,
And VMAX isn't an awful robot, is the thing. It's a solid machine.
You can see why it was rejected for Series 4 because it's just a bland Firestorm Cassius clone. But They do it. They make a really good effort to drive underneath Hypno-Disc. Unfortunately, they have armor made of biscuit tin, and Hypno-Disc just shows them the error of their ways, and once again goes for the battery kill.
Poor old VMAX loses it. Poor old VMAX loses its CO2 basically on the first hit, and that is just seconds before it pulls off a drive that could maybe see it KO Hypno-Disc.
They could have been the first robot to. Yeah, they wouldn't have KO'd him. They would have self-rider, but it would have been good to see Hypno-Disc's self-rider in action.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, you can't fault VMAX for showing up and giving it a rare hot go. And then the heat final is just one of the worst heat finals.
It's just
Razorblade, really, it should have been terrible here. Razorblade was limping in round 2, and then stupid Terrible burnt themselves to a crisp, and so now we've got Razorblade, who spends all their time...
Terrible set a bit of cloth that probably wasn't even connected to the internals on fire, span around in circles, and then said their robot was dead. So,
poor old Razorblade, you really wonder whether them putting their robot together to be in the heat final was even worth it. They could have just put an immobile robot into the arena and let him just smash it up, because the ability to move half a foot before Hypno-Disc closes in and destroys you is probably not that much worth it. They probably spent a lot of time and stress. The producers should have just gone, let's just pretend that they were mobile and tell Hypno-Disc to run in for the first attack, and we'll just tell the viewers at home that it was killed on the first hit. That's what I would have done.
It's quite a shame of Razorblade, because this was their last appearance, and I can't help but wonder if they were a bit disillusioned after they basically got thrown into a fight with Hypno-Disc, that they had no chance of winning, and we shouldn't even have been in the fight in the first place.
After walking it against Razorblade, Hypno-Disc enters into the semi-finals and delivers one of the most iconic fights in robot combat history against Splinter. Now, this fight, I think probably, unless I've missed something particularly spectacular on the live circuit or perhaps the Chinese shows, this is still the most complete destruction of a heavyweight robot we have ever seen.
You could argue Vanquish getting split in half in BattleBots. But
maybe.
I would still. This is a more stringent destruction of a robot.
This certainly looks like it cost more. Let's put it that way. Relatively, obviously.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, it starts almost slightly cagey with Splinter managing to absorb a couple of hits with the scoop probably by basically turning with the direction that it's spinning. But then the tooth just catches the edge of the scoop and just rips Splinter's face off. And
it's kind of like stealth ram levels of impact. Like you just sort of the whole robot twitches to the side as it happens.
With the most perfect timing.
It's like being socked in the jaw by Mike Tyson.
Yeah, with the most perfect timing from Jonathan Pierce as well. They'll protect their vulnerable sides, and who knows? Oh no, they won't.
Until that moment, yeah.
Per Splinter never really had a chance, because even before the fateful hit that rips the scoop off, the scoop is falling apart. It is incredibly damaged, so it was going to hold up for maybe one or two more hits before it gave out anyway.
Well, what was the scoop on that version of Splinter made of? Because it looked plasticky.
Probably
I think it was an oil drum.
Yeah, probably just thin steel or aluminium.
Oh yeah, it was probably the paint.
I'm pretty sure it was part of an oil drum I read somewhere.
Yeah, but it certainly wasn't going to hold up to
It's not Tornado's. It's not Tornado's.
So yeah, the annihilation here is just delightful. It's iconic, and there's nothing we can say that our readers and viewers don't already know.
The only thing I'm going to say is modern. You couldn't get this fight in modern robot combat because there is a base level of sportsmanliness and holding back, but that's probably for the good of the sport, but the absolute lack of concern shown by Hypno here is worth it.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine how much outcry there would have been against the Hypno-Disc team if this had happened in Series 9, and it would they utterly eviscerated Splinter, and then Splinter had been expected to go into the arena again.
Yeah.
Like, you've got 2 hours to make that thing into a working robot again. Have fun.
It's the thing about Hypno-Disc is it does lots of surface level damage and works its way in, whereas somebody like Carbide or Ironside, it gives you a big hit that breaks you inside. And that's why, you're actually smashing up a robot that's not moving, whereas here, Splinter is still moving a large part of it, because it's only surface level damage. Because Hypno-Disc's teeth only go, 4 or 5 centimeters in at a time. Each rip gets Hypno-Disc further and further into the internals, and that's what makes it so. It's like they're peeling Splinter apart.
A babushka of death.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yes.
Then we get a delightful fight versus Wild Thing, which is Wild Thing's first time out of 4, only time out of 4 into the top 8, and of course they get punished by fighting Hypno-Disc. And they.
I was supporting Wild Thing so much when I first watched this episode back when I was like 4.
Oh, normie, such a normie.
It was like this cool looking
hipster.
and then it was up against insurmountable odds, and it was doing so well.
Yeah.
Yeah, poor Wild Thing, it suffers the same problem Steg did. I mean, it's a more capable robot than Steg for fighting Hypno-Disc, because it's this big armoured wedge. It can get under Hypno-Disc, push it into the CPZ, but they can't do damage. They just can't. And Hypno-Disc can do a lot of damage, and in the end, especially in the old series rules,
The control just can't do it. Yeah, control just not going to get you there.
No, especially not in the classic series where damage was weighted to be the most important of all of them. I think it's aggression that was rated highest in the reboot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Series 9, Null Shark. You'll probably give this to Wild Thing.
Yeah, we leave the semi-finals and Hypno-Disc is looking unbeatable. What could stop it? If it came up against Chaos 2 again, you kidding me? That plastic armour against that thing? Brutal. And then it comes up against Pussycat and... Well...
Oh, God. This is one of my favourite fights in Robot Wars history.
What a choice.
It was such
a weird
it's
thing to
lighting
say,
in a bottle.
It's not
It really is.
But yeah, the one of the few weaknesses that Hypno-Disc has that modern spinners don't is that massive disc, which is like basically an instant kill zone, is entirely in the front half of the robot, and the back half is basically a lightly armored box with some exposed wheels on it. And if you happen to be able to outdrive it before the disc gets up to speed, then you can get a good hit on that back part, and you've got a good chance of knocking something important out.
That's the thing. It's not even really a weakness, because Hypno-Disc's wheels are tiny. So to get that, you have to be an absolutely incredible driver. Unfortunately for Hypno-Disc, David Gribble was one of the best there ever was.
Mm-hmm.
It's debatable as to whether he outright was the best, and you'll get people arguing that he was even today. But it was one of these where just like I was pulling for Pussycat to win the whole series, and then opening stages of this fight, I'm like, oh, it's never going to be Hypno-Disc. Even as a kid, I was just like, okay, that design is not going to hold up to anything Hypno-Disc can throw at it. And then it just jukes around the side and just rips its wheel, just dents the wheel armor in, and Hypno-Disc can't drive after that.
It's such a. I remember going into this going, we really are just going to get a Series 3 Grand Final rematch. I'm like, there's no way Stinger's going to beat Chaos 2. So I'm like, we're literally just going to get a rematch. And then as soon as that blow hit, I'm like, oh, so it's going to be Pussycat in the Grand Final. That's interesting. I remember I was disappointed, but I don't think I was actually that gutted, because it was just a bit different. And I thought I'm like, oh no, Hypno-Disc will be back. They'll be fine. They've got plenty of potential. I actually didn't mind having a different. It was just a shame that the actual grand final was not as two-sided as it probably could have been.
Yeah, there's something to be said. There's something to be said real quickly about the KO blow. When Shunt axes the robot and axes through the disc, like, especially from after seeing so many examples from Series 6 and 7, and in the reboot especially, of Shunt's axe just coming down and just bouncing off things. You forget how brutal it was for a time. Like, Hypno-Disc's entire disc warps. The robot, the chassis seems to warp. It can't even return for the third place
It does,
fight.
yeah. That was an absolutely devastating hit from Shunt on there, and there's something like, I think it feels more brutal because it's a hit on the disc, because like it's the iconic symbol of the robot just getting smashed.
Yeah, and it's in full spin when it happens, and then it just jerks.
It jumps, yeah.
And that's like, it is the moment that it all ends for Hypno-Disc in Series 4. It seals the deal, kind of.
Yes.
Because it had already lost the fight, but that is the moment where, yeah, it's over. Pack it up and go home.
Such a shame too, because like you look at the dent in that disc and you go, how do you buff that out? Like, you know, do you melt it and reforge it, or do you fill it? Like, I don't even know what you do. You can't hammer it out, I guess. I mean, I guess you can hammer it out.
And they show the disc in the after fight interview with just this massive hole in it.
And it was that hole that prevented Hypno-Disc being able to fight for third place. Because if Hypno-Disc had fought Stinger, it would have just wrecked it in one hit, and it would have been third. But unfortunately, Hypno-Disc had to come fourth.
Well, I mean, yeah, they actually had the modes and everything fixed, but they couldn't put Hypno-Disc out looking like that. Come on, they've got standards.
Yeah. And the thing is, it was almost going to have another appearance in Series 4. It was almost in the War of Independence special.
Which should have been. Like, you know,
oh, thank God it
Hypno-Disc never represented the UK. Why did it never represent the UK? Chaos 2 did, Firestorm did, Razor did, Tornado did. You know,
it probably never represented the UK because it would have been
like, Bigger Brother did in Nickelodeon, for God's sake. Like, every other major all-star, like Spawn Again did, Stinger did. You know, Plunderbird did. It's like the best robot never to represent the UK, and it just defies logic.
I think it's a good thing it didn't, because the robot it was slated to replace was Detonator, and it would have destroyed Frenzy in one thing, and then you've basically got a pointless tournament because the UK's won the War of Independence. Every US representative is out. I guess it's just the British Civil War now.
They should have left Hypno-Disc in and taken out some of the others, I reckon.
Take out Panic
Attack.
It doesn't need another.
Take out. See, they wanted the Panic Attack Mortis thing, so like I don't have an issue with it there, but put it in like the, you know, actually no, I'm wrong. I just realised I'm completely wrong. It did represent the UK against Germany. In Extreme 1.
Well, we may as well.
That's a good
segue into Extreme.
Start with that. So Extreme 1 is such a bizarre blight on Hypno-Disc's record, because it's got one of its best fights of all time, and then 4 of its worst, and then a dogged performance against Behemoth, which it's just defeated. So four terrible fights, and then, you know, one iconic one. It's just a bizarre bipolar performance.
The thing that we have to remember with Hypno-Disc in Extreme 1 is that Extreme 1 wasn't filmed when all in like a coherent order. It was filmed in and around Series 5 and a bit of Series 4 and like a bit after Series 5, and as a result of that, at varying points on the timeline, you get a Hypno-Disc that's already fatigued from its Series 5 end stage battles with Bigger Brother and its rematch with Firestorm.
It's not even just that, because Hypno-Disc came back faster self-right and more powerful disc, but also something that it says on the Hypno-Disc website is that throughout even the early stages of Extreme, they had some undefined electrical bug that was affecting them throughout, and you kind of see that in against Nasty Warrior and even against Behemoth to some extent.
Yeah, so they had a lot of poor luck in Extreme 1, which is a shame because they start out so wonderfully strong. In like the second episode of the series, when we're still in the era of Behemoth before we switch over to the era of Tornado in the second half, where it gets put into the arena with Wheelie Big Cheese, which is a pretty solid robot, and Ming 3, which is, you know, okay. And they're hyping up this fight as like, will it be the end of Hypno-Disc? Because that's what Extreme 1 was like.
Yeah.
And then it utterly dominates both of them.
Yeah. It's a. I was gonna try and get Nasty Warrior out of the way before we talked about the good one because I want it to be all bad. But all right, let's. So Ming 3 and Wheelie Big Cheese. Yeah, by no means bad robots. This is, I think, is the best Mayhem. Does anyone? Oh, the King Bee one is up there as well.
The Thermidor 2 one is also up there just for the sheer feat,
true,
but this one is certainly
true.
the most like kind of spectacular.
Yeah. Well, this and the Thermidor 2 ones are the two one-sided ones. Like, you know, there's no other way about it really, because you know Pussycat beats Smidsy in something, but I mean one of them's something. Whereas this is, you know, everyone was awed by Supernova taking out Ming 3's wheels. Well, Hypno-Disc took Ming 3's wheels off a year before.
Yeah.
So like I always used to just go, I don't understand. Why is everyone so impressed by Supernova?
Yeah, well, you know, they want to hype up Supernova because it doesn't.
No, I'm just saying.
Fantastic.
I'm just saying. Like I love Supernova as well, but I'm like Hypno-Disc takes the wheels off. Supernova wrecks them within the tyres, so the tyres are spinning on broken wheels. Hypno-Disc is just like, yeah, no, that's too complicated. Let's just take the wheels off. Which is kind of funny because this is a fight that would have happened in the War of Independence had Hypno-Disc beaten Frenzy. It would have fought Ming 2, and this would have been how it probably would have gone.
Ming 2 would probably have done slightly better because its wheels were enclosed.
It's weird to see Wheelie Big Cheese take so much damage because I don't know about you, but just like when you're young and you hear Wheelie Big Cheese is made of titanium and you think titanium that's invulnerable, and then you see Hypno-Disc leaving these big.
It's like a solid block of titanium.
Yeah, and Hypno-Disc leaving these big gouges.
Well, the thing with titanium is that if you don't weld it properly, that it breaks apart quite easily.
Yeah, but you don't think like that when you don't think.
It happened to Wheelie Big Cheese's
like
wheels
that,
quite a lot
when you're young and or just instinctively. Wheelie Big Cheese seems solid.
and.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Like, you look at those wheels, and it's like they're solid, but they're actually hollow, and that's why you can break them.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing with the thing with Hypno-Disc is that they now had an extra 20 kilograms to work with, and therefore the disc now weighs 20 kilograms. Right? The disc makes up a whole fifth of the robot's weight.
Yeah.
And oh god, it is a wonderful machine.
I mean, that's just a disc. You got to think some of that weight also went into like the motors and all that.
And so
yeah.
We're still not entirely sure what happens in the Annihilator because pretty much from the first get-go, Hypno-Disc is barely working.
Yeah, and it was also always going to be the robot that everybody wanted to gang up on because it was
like Splinter wanted revenge and Pussycat wanted to set out to beat it again, and everyone knew it was strong, and it still it still went through 2 rounds because Exterminator and Thermidor proved to be less mobile.
Yeah, it was an Extreme 1 Annihilator, so they had issues.
And then the 3rd round, basically, it breaks down upon first hit from Arnold. So,
I mean, an Annihilator isn't an ideal concept for any robot that isn't called can opener, but especially not for Hypno-Disc, which likes to have space to spin up and stuff, and it doesn't really have that space.
Yeah, exactly.
Here.
Like, really, the fact that Hypno-Disc was
it's an endurance fight.
The fact that Hypno-Disc was able to wreck Wheelie Big Cheese and Ming 3 was actually surprising, considering how suited Hypno-Disc was to one-on-ones and not to melees. Because look at Hypno-Disc's record in melees. Let's have a quick look. It's not very good. It's got it beat Razorblade and the Predator.
Wow.
It scraped through 2 Annihilators. It won the Mayhem, so that's 1-1, and then a couple of anomalies. And then it won round 1 after Barbarous 2 pretty much did most of the work. And then it lost its Losers Melee, and then it lost the All-Stars Melee, and then it lost the Challenge Belt Melee. So the only multi-bot battle that it won was its Mayhem and the Series 4, Eliminator.
In which one of its opponents was the Predator.
Stop hating on the Predator. The Predator's nowhere near as bad as you make it sound.
It's gonna be on the Shitbots of Series 4, mate. You know it's gonna be there.
Yeah, well, anyway,
I mean,
So that's the Annihilator. It's just a strange,
if
sad loss of potential.
I think,
really.
I think, yeah, I
It
think when you
is,
look at it,
yeah.
it feels like it comes at the, feels like that's at like the bottom of the hole of like this gradual decline through Extreme, even if it's not like chronologically so. Because as
Well, we don't know what order these
yeah,
events were
yeah.
filmed in.
I mean,
You look at all the robots who fought in that Annihilator. Arnold A. Terminator wasn't in Series 5. Pussycat had a non-damaging loss to Firestorm. Splinter was flipped out of the arena, so they didn't have damage to repair. Thermidor 2 was out flipped, and Exterminator had a controversial, but unlucky loss to Corkscrew. So, with the exception of Exterminator, really all the other robots were fighting fit. So, Hypno-Disc, meanwhile, had gone through the entire series. It had to fight through Firestorm twice, Bigger Brother, Dominator, Bulldog Breed, and Atomic. Like, none of these robots had to fight a caliber of robots that strong. That's like 5 robots that would eventually reach the top 8 of Robot Wars, and Hypno-Disc had to fight them all in a row. So, yeah, you could forgive them for being a little bit tired by the end and had to fight an Annihilator.
yeah, I suppose. But imagine if you were a Hypno-Disc fan watching Extreme like as it was happening, you were probably aghast, like, oh god, what has happened?
Yeah.
Why is
I
my
know.
favourite robot
Yeah.
bad all of a sudden?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And really, I wonder... Sorry, Dan, you go first.
Well, no, because I was going to move us on to the
It's
nasty
we
warrior.
can probably
well,
move on to Nasty War. It's an embarrassing
Yeah,
fight.
I was just going to say, can we just... It's an embarrassing fight that was not well conceived. They should have fought... They overthought it. They should have put it against a decent robot that Hypnodisc could have beaten. But a wooden robot, the problem was it would beat it so decisively that the fucking wood chips got caught and caused the breakdown.
I'm not even sure
Put it against Flensburger Power or something.
Oh god, I'm not sure it was even the wood chips. I think it was an electrical fault because when you see Hypnodisc, the arm is just the self-righting mechanism is just raising like randomly. They lose drive, which I don't know. You think the disc would, if it's wood chips, you think the disc would stop before drive fails. So I think this was just the electrical bug, and they assumed it was the wood chips kind of because the fight has just happened.
The electrical bug did plague their untelevised fight with TX-108.
I refuse to acknowledge that fight took place just because,
God, it's such a like Team Danby gets a win over Hypnodisc, and then it's just
I know.
Yeah, 'cause it's just so- no one benefits from... The only people who benefit from that taking place are Team Danby. So it's just like, well, ratings or Team Danby's feelings. Well,
Yeah,
I can see why the decision was made.
I think that's just it's probably for the best they didn't air that. Hypnodisc didn't need more negative press.
Yeah.
And the thing is that's the only time TX-108 actually fought.
Yep.
So we don't even know how big it is in terms of like relative to the arena and the other robots. We just have this single picture of it.
I like you saying
Yeah.
relative to the arena, just the idea of, I don't know, Team Danby entered a 1,000 kilogram
Giant.
robot.
Yeah. No, it's like a giant robot made of cardboard, so it was the size of Mr. Psycho.
Hypnodisc broke itself trying to breach a 25 centimeter fake
Yeah.
steel.
It's like it was Ripper. It was Ripper before it was Ripper.
What happened was that it just broke down 30 seconds into the fight. And that was almost certainly the electrical fault. We don't know any other details,
Yeah.
so for all we know, TX-108 was actually the perfect design for beating
I doubt it.
We've discussed these weird electrical bugs. We've discussed the fatigue, but probably the most impressive Hypnodisc loss, and the one that you could more say is just a downright loss, and the first time Hypnodisc...
The one that had no luck involved.
Yeah,
basically.
yeah. And the first time Hypnodisc is made to look kind of ineffective, really, against Behemoth.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah, and this is a pretty good
It
fight.
is actually a pretty good fight. I remember looking at it. It's the first time Hypnodisc is flipped and able to use its self-rider, which is good. And our boy Toast, Tale of the Toaster, wrote a really interesting blog about this on the wiki, which is essentially just pointing out that, this is the third time Hypnodisc has ever lost. And the first two were Chaos 2 and Pussycat. So this is a big deal for Behemoth, who everyone's just like, oh, come on, Behemoth just can't do as well as it can. And because Behemoth then loses in the next fight, you dismiss it. But it's a remarkable achievement for Behemoth to have achieved.
I get that people dismiss the Behemoth because it loses its next fight, but that next fight was against Ray.
And it was
well,
it was a very good performance by Behemoth.
And it was a really close fight as well.
Yeah. The thing about this is like, as I was saying, like, Hypno-Disc's first loss against Chaos 2, I mean, it's losing to the champion, and Hypno-Disc is very obviously by now just knackered, done in. The next fight against Pussycat scores that 1 in a 1,000.
It's just a lightning in a bottle.
And then Behemoth just defeats it. There's no luck, there's no godly move. It just deflects the disc and controls the fight.
It's sustained pressure. It's what you need to do, yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Maybe there's some aspect of the electrical bug because Hypno-Disc seems very under the weather throughout, but despite even including that, it's still, it's a very impressive performance by Behemoth.
It is, yeah. And it's such an amazing moment for Behemoth as well, because it's just like it had been doing so poorly in the eyes of a lot of people up to that point. Like it had that unlucky loss against Pitbull in Series 3. And then it had gone the distance against Razor in the World Championships, but not a lot of people saw that. So the next thing people saw of it was it, limply dying against Exterminator in Series.
And a per Annihilator performance in Series 4 as well.
Yeah, not a very a withdrawal from an Annihilator.
Yeah, and then it shows up in Extreme 1, and and it's getting all the hype in the from like the challenge belt and all that, and it's kind of hard to believe because it's like a Behemoth's not that good, and then it beats Hypno-Disc.
Yeah,
and that was kind of like that was the point where it really settled in that Behemoth was an amazing robot, but then it goes on to have equally poor luck until Series 10. But
yeah,
but they tried.
Yeah. So that's it pretty much for Series 3, 4 and Extreme 1. We won't ask what everyone's favourite is because it's going to be too hard, but let's just ask, what's everyone's most underrated Hypno-Disc fight?
Ooh. I kind of want to say the Mayhem.
Yeah, it's a good shout. I don't think it's underrated, but I think it is a little bit underrated, and therefore you can justify saying it. Because people don't mention it in Hypno-Disc's most famous victories, because you sort of just go to the UK, because everyone knows Hypno-Disc did crap in Extreme, but then there's that one fight in Extreme which was just as good, if not better, than a lot of its UK series. That's a good shout.
I think the Mayhem. I also want to give a shout out to the Steg fight, and
yeah,
the Steg fight is a solid shout. Yeah,
I'm gonna go with VMAX.
VMAX is also a very good shout.
I really enjoy the VMAX fight.
Hypno-Disc doesn't have a lot of bad fights.
It's Evil Weevil and 101 basically.
I don't even mind the 101 fight. Really, I think it's just like in this era, it's just Evil Weevil. Out of Series 3 and 4, Evil Weevil's the worst, and the rest of them are at least entertaining, if not downright true.
Yeah. And that's quite amazing because even some of the good robots tend to have a couple of stinkers.
Yeah, like Razor versus Backstab is nothing to write home about, and Chaos 2 versus Medusa 2000s is a bit subpar, and the grand final versus Hypno-Disc isn't that great. So no, that's the other one that's not very good. The grand final. So Evil Weevil and then Chaos 2.
But yeah, but that's an impressive feat for a robot, especially a robot that has the potential to knock out its opponent in a single hit and just give us some really one-hit kills. It is such a good machine, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's just an iconic. It's even though it never won anything besides that most original entry trophy. It's just the fact that it was considered one of the best ones up there with Razor and Chaos 2. Was just a testament to its abilities.
Yeah, and it easily could have won something if the stars had aligned in its favor. Like if Pussycat hadn't got that perfect hit, it would have won Series 4.
Yeah.
It was teeth grindingly close to victory in Series 5 as well, but we'll obviously be discussing that next time.
Yes, well.
Yeah.
Yes, after Now, you may be wondering, audience, what was the cause of that poor performance in the Annihilator? What caused Hypno-Disc to be in such bad health? You know what it was, but we'll cover it anyway next. We'll cover it anyway next episode, where we cover Series 5, Series 6, and Extreme 2. The downfall of Hypno-Disc, I guess, or the gradual incline downwards.
What a sorry way for a legend to end. But we'll cover that in time.
All right. Well, that sounds pretty good, and we will adjourn till next time.
Until then,
Ta-ra,
bye-bye.
everybody.
Goodbye.